Thank
Thank
you
you.
so much, Greg. Thanks everyone for coming tonight. It's great to be with you. Thank you, Mary and Moonbi, for traveling to South Sudan, for taking those beautiful pictures, for being with the people there, and for letting us interview you for a couple minutes this evening. I want to start with you because I thought it was great that you started working in February of 2024 for Friends. And then in March, you took a trip to South Sudan. It was like the first thing on your list, your first task in your brand new job. So I want to ask you, what what resonated with you there? I know when we were chatting earlier, you said you were very impressed with the resilience of the women and the girls in South Sudan. So I'm just wondering if you could share your first impressions with us as someone who went to South Sudan for the first time in a brand new job.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Simone, for having me. It was definitely eye-opening to visit South Sudan soon after joining Friends in Solidarity. But it's eye-opening in a very positive way, in my view, because I got to learn first to know more and more about South Sudan and the people of South Sudan without having to read. It's a whole different experience when you see something as opposed to when you read something. So in my view, it was an honor to hit the ground running. But what really struck me, and you're right, Simone, it's the girls and the women and their resilience. I particularly remember visiting a primary school in Kit, and there were about 18 or so girls, young girls, probably from ages of 6 to maybe 18. I could be wrong, I could be right. And they were in the boarding school as the only kids left behind, only girls left behind. Because when we were there was extreme weather. There was like 100 or so degrees Fahrenheit. And so schools had been closed, and kids were asked, those who were in boarding school, to go home for 2 weeks. And so these girls couldn't go home because where they come from, there's conflict and their lives were in danger if they went home. And so they had to stay behind in the schools. And they were staying, we met them sitting down, little, cramped up area, sitting down, watching this one phone. They're watching a TV from this one little phone. You can imagine 18 people, coming close and trying to keep themselves entertained through this one phone. But what struck me is the difference. The boys' school, it's a boarding school for both boys and girls. So the girls were watching this video or this movie from their phone, while as the boys had the TV in the dormitory. That's a contrast. But the girls were very joyful, even when they were telling us about this story that the boys have their TV, they don't have their TV, and they're watching it. They were more joyful about what they're watching and how entertained they were. They were not, they were not perturbed by the whole difference that the boys have their TV and they can go and watch the TV. And that really struck me, the genuine joy, the genuine resilience to just pursue whatever they wished and they wanted to watch this video. And that really struck me. And in talking to the teachers, they were quick to tell us that resilience is the same one these girls apply in their schools, in their learning. They know they're there to learn, and that's what they were applying themselves for. I really liked that story. And what actually struck me is when we came back to the US, Mombi, as you know her, was very, very struck by this story as well. And she looked for resources to find at least a TV for the little girls. And it did come to happen. And when they got the TV, they sent us this little note, the dorm, prefect dorm and the head girl, they sent us this little note. And what they said in the note was they can now watch the movies and forget the hardships they've left back at home. They can transition their minds to something positive. I was really struck by their resilience, and that really stuck with me. And also coming to your point, Simone, about women, I was struck by the resilience of women in South Sudan, but even more so the contrast when we were driving around, in shopping centers, we saw these groups of men sitting down, just chilling, idling. That was really, it was very normal and very striking. Every other place you go, the men are sitting around chilling. But in contrast, the women were hustling, see these women with carrying the baggage in their heads, almost always with some kid carrying a child and a baggage and some bag, and they're transitioning, either going to the market or coming back from the market or trying to fend for their families. And there were these, in the markets, there were these women who with really small, like 2 feet by 2 feet square area, and they're selling their peanuts, they're selling their vegetables. They're there to sell whatever they can, and they'll stay there for as long as they can until they sell. And that really, really struck me with how resilient. They didn't ask for much. What they had is what they were working with, and that struck me. And we also met this woman who had recently received funding for a hut, a thatched hut, and it's one room, and she got that hut because where she lives, she had been displaced, and so she got this as an opportunity to live in with her family. But she was weaving this little basket, and she was very happy to see us. She's selling us, the basket. She'll make it and sell. She was very, very happy to see us, and she was not, her hardships were not holding her back. She came. We asked her to. She actually wanted to see us much later, and she asked if she can come and see us. She needed to pick something from us, and we said, "Fine, come see us where we are." Obviously she knew where we were. When she came to see us, she had cleaned up. She was looking good. She had her jewelry, and she had her outfit, which you could say she intentionally had changed that to be presentable. She had her dignity with her, and that really, really touched me, that it was important for her to show up as a dignified woman, accessorized and looking really herself, and that struck me. And in talking to her, she talked to us about this neighbor of hers, a woman who was living in the hut next to her, and she was coughing consistently, which Mumbi and I thought at the time it could have been tuberculosis. And she was talking to us about how this woman kept coughing. They tried to get some medication. They could not get medicine for her, so they opted to go for traditional medicine. And with that, it could only help so much. She just continued coughing. And unfortunately, our Lord called her at some point. And it was really sad to hear this story. But the way this woman told this story, she was more, it was coming from a point of view of her friend. She cherished her friend and very, very fondly talking about her. That was really, it spoke to me, just like the positivity. There was sadness there, but the positivity of her friendship with this woman really, really struck me. Those are, if I can speak to the key elements that spoke to me or that resonated with me while we were out there pertaining to girls and women. Those two elements to me spoke volumes.
Thank you, Mary. That is just so beautiful. Just the resilience and the joy in the midst of such extreme sorrow and hardship, and the dignity and the work ethic that these women and girls are carrying, and the appreciation for the little things. I thank you so much for sharing that with us. And Moonbi got to go to South Sudan twice, in March, and then you just returned last month. And so I am wondering, between March and September, what changed? I'm hoping you can give us sort of the big picture, what is happening in South Sudan, and what is different between March and September.
I think the first striking thing was the weather. When we went there with Mary, it was the hottest season, and they were actually registering the highest temperatures in quite a number of years. Like in the modern history of South Sudan, most people could not recall it having been that hot, to the point that schools were closed down for 2 weeks because of heat wave. to try and just keep the children safe. The weather was different, yes, but the weather is different with devastating effects for majority of the country. On our way to Wau, we couldn't land at the first airstrip because it was flooded out. And people going on to other places actually had to disembark in Wau and wait for other planes that are more, I think, like rough terrain planes to come and ferry them on. So there's serious storms, flooding, affecting huge parts of South Sudan. These are areas that are habited. Some of them have been underwater now for almost 4 years running. So even though I slept better at night because it was cooler where we are, a lot of the people in the country are now on the other extreme, from high heat to now lots of water that is not getting drained fast enough. So a lot of displacement. And you know, this comes on the heels of many returnees coming in from Sudan, where the war has been going on since April 15th last year. It's the same region. It's really the same diocese of Malakal receiving all these people and also receiving these extreme climate change issues. When we were there in March, the US dollar was trading at 700 South Sudanese pounds. When I got there on the first day, they exchanged it for me $1 to 3,000 South Sudanese pounds. 5 days later, it had gone up to 5,000 South Sudanese pounds to $1. So it means you go into the store today and buy a bag of rice, and tomorrow it could have almost doubled in price. Civil servants had not been paid in March. They are yet to be paid even now as we speak. So it is 10 months for police officers, teachers working in the civil service, nurses and doctors working in the civil service, military officers haven't been paid. And already South Sudan, they earn very, very low amounts of money. Since food is still imported for the most part from Uganda, you can imagine how high the prices of food have gone because the roads are now even in worse condition. It's taking more fuel, more days for the food to be transported over road. There was a bit of insecurity because a bus was torched and set a light while I was there, a bus between Juba and Uganda. And then the elections were postponed for another 2 years. As it was, the elections were supposed to happen this year. It was already a postponement from before. So another 2 years keeps the people in a state of uncertainty. But there's also a lot of restlessness because not many people have trust and faith in the government that is currently in power. And the disparity in power and wealth keeps growing. There are some places you go, people you meet who seem to have a lot of money, but that I would probably say is less than 2% or even 1% of the population. So there is that tension of people feeling, how can we possibly continue in this situation for another 2 years, unable to meet our most basic needs? And even talking to the South Sudanese working in our projects there, the Solidarity projects, even though the Solidarity team does a wonderful job of trying to adjust salaries because every month the value of the money changes and they are paid in local currency, but they still tell you we're struggling to educate our children because the systems out there do not accommodate our situation, because everybody still has to try and cover their costs, whether it's school fees, whether it's medical fees. So there was a lot more for me suffering, and it was evident. You know, you meet people who are fatigued, and it's hard to speak hope, even when you're talking to our students and trying to encourage them, because they're going out into this landscape. I met so many of our students who, from the kitchen gardens they're allowed to keep in CHTI, they sell the produce and send it home to educate another sibling. So it's this cycle, and it's gut-wrenching, and it's very painful to see because even though as Christians we say there's always hope, for many South Sudanese, the hope was in the elections that was meant to happen, with the hope of new governance that would care about the people. And that has been delayed. So that's how South Sudan was this time. Yeah.
Thank you, Mumbi. Is there any more talk of the census or preparing for the next elections?
You see, the reason they gave for postponing the elections was that they don't have the funds to do it. And a lot of the sharing of power agreements that was supposed to have happened when they delayed the elections 2 years ago, the processes that are supposed to take place have never taken place. So there was great condemnation from the ambassadors of countries that are present in South Sudan, saying this doesn't seem to be any goodwill to actually make this happen. So we don't know whether there'll be elections in 2 years. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, it does. It sounds like a lot of suffering, a lot of uncertainty, you know, with the huge fluctuations in the currency day to day, and with, you know, lots of people coming in from the conflict in Sudan. I'm sure it's not an easy place to live right now. Mary, I want to go to you because I want to ask you a little bit about when you were in South Sudan. Can you tell us about your experience visiting the Good Shepherd Center in terms of an organization that really helps people to cope and heal from trauma? I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your experience there and the support they give.
Thank you. It was a really inspiring experience at the Good Shepherd Peace Center, where we met. We visited a blind school that is working under the pastoral program, and it was closed, so we didn't really get to interact with the children, but we did get a good opportunity to interact with the teachers and a few of the head teacher and a few of his staff. And it was inspiring and also emotional to hear from him about his program, where he facilitates trauma conferences or trauma sessions with people who are visually impaired. But he did highlight that their program has been very successful, and they're looking into broadening that program to help persons living with disabilities, and not necessarily not just those who are visually impaired. But what did strike me about the conversation that we had with the head teacher, he talked about how persons who are visually impaired have sort of been normalized to understand that that's normal. They're not part of the larger community. They are their isolated life is what is meant for them, and it's a status quo. It's not something that they can challenge. Their cultural disposition is such that if you're blind or you're not, you cannot be helped. Your life is as is. There's no room for improvement. You shouldn't even have a dream of improvement. And they talked about structural abuses, or structural limitations for them in whether they're going to school, whether they're going for taking public transport, whether they're going to buy their groceries. One of the things that he mentioned that was really challenging for them is bringing them in attendance for the conferences. How do they bring them? They don't know how to get into public transport. They don't know how to get there. And if they ask for help, they don't trust that they will get the right kind of help. That, if they give the transport facilitator their fare, do they know, are they assured that that will be valued as is, or will they be conned what that, the value of that money is? And so he talked about how the biggest challenge for their sessions, their trauma sessions, is bringing participants successfully to the venue or to the location. And the other thing that he talked about is participants being, in sort of mindset that they are not aware of what trauma is. They're not even aware that they have incurred trauma, because for them, their lives have been so normalized. And they take that to be normal. And so he talked about the sessions also including providing some uplifting on their self-awareness, their self-dignity, and assuring them that they can take control of their lives. that their lives is in their hands and not necessarily the hands of their community. And that's something that really, really struck with me as he talked about facilitating those sessions. But he also talked about the lack of health care for them. Even when they went to get health care, it was really challenging. For instance, finding their way to the hospital, to the location that they can get some health support. And how will that be facilitated? How will that conversation go with the health practitioner? That was always a challenge, and it's something that they've also incorporated in their sessions on how they can conduct themselves, or they conduct themselves when they go out there and source for healthcare. And he also talked about the limited education services overall for persons living with disability. As it is hard to get education services in South Sudan, even for people who are not living with disabilities, or for those living with disabilities, it's really, really challenging. And in fact, when we were having conversations with them, they talked about having braille materials for facilitating sessions. And when we came back to the US, Moby and I were looking for places that we can get free or funding for brailing materials that they can then use as they expand on working with outside Juba. And it still continues to be a challenge for us, even here in the US, to get that kind of material or that kind of service. So that was something that the head teacher and his staff expressed to us while we were visiting them. The facility itself looks very clean. They've maintained it very well. That was really good to know. And they also talked about in their sessions how they help the students on the health, personal hygiene, and just making sure that they're aware of that. So they overall, the message that we got is they do have the trauma sessions, but trauma sessions also come with their own needs. There's always the ride-on needs that come with every group, and they have to look into those ride-on needs and sort of accommodate them into their trauma sessions. So far, the trauma sessions have been very well received, and they do facilitate these sessions in collaboration with the Archdiocese of Juba, and they've been very well received. What they need is more funding to help expand them. And like I said earlier, I highlighted their desire to expand these sessions outside of just one disability, but taking the sessions to all persons living with disabilities.
Thank you, Mary. It sounds like just a wonderful refuge for anyone suffering trauma, and especially for people that are living with disabilities. And I love how they take care of the whole person, and all of the needs. Yeah, that's really great to hear. And you know, it's challenging enough, just daily life, right, in South Sudan. And then, you know, but not being able to see on top of that, I can't imagine, you know, how challenging that is. And I'm glad that they have somewhere to go and to build community and, you know, to heal and to grow. Because you touched on healthcare, and because I know we have several people that have been in the healthcare field on this call, I'm wondering, Mumbi, if you can share a little bit about healthcare in South Sudan, and also like just help. What are people struggling with now? You know, what were you seeing when you were there in terms of, you know, malaria, malnutrition, and the like?
Yes, thank you. I spent time in WOW, and this time I was very blessed to be able to go on an outreach mission with some of our students and a team from Hadid, which is a health facility outpatient run by the Salesian Sisters of Don Bosco. Their outreach clinic is the only one of its kind, servicing a huge area. So we drove 40 kilometers out of WOW. The roads are terrible, so it took us an hour and a half. And the number of women and children under the age of 5 already waiting when we got there was astonishing to me. And they said on a good day, they serve 400 and over patients. And I sat next to the makeshift laboratory. So it's this open space, it's an old school, and the doctors set up on different corners of the compound, and there's a makeshift laboratory and a makeshift pharmacy. And I sat next to the lab, and more than 70% of the children tested had malaria. And these are children under the age of 5. And you realize that the things that you would usually tell somebody, oh, you have to make sure you use a mosquito net with your children. They don't have the money for a mosquito net. So the most that you can do is give them the medicine, and knowing that if the rainy season persists, you're going to see them again in a couple of months. They go to this area every 2 weeks. There was a lot more malnutrition. This time I could see children with marasmus and kwashiorkor. The telltale signs for these nutrition deficient diseases are very easy to see. Reddish hair, distended bellies. You could see a lot more of that, because even though right now, since it's a rainy season, when you go to the market, there is so much more to buy in terms of vegetables, there is no purchasing power. So what people are eating is a very nutrition deficient diet, and many people, it's 1 meal a day or even less. In the area we'd gone, there are also a lot of displaced peoples who have moved to that area because of ethnic conflicts. So when you move, you really move with the clothes on your back. There's only so much you can carry. So you come and you're at the mercy of the inhabitants of this area to give you land. So even before a family gets to the point where they can grow some food to feed themselves, it's a few months, because even shelter is a problem. So when I visited the 2 big health facilities in Wau, apart from the government one, at this one run by the Salesian Sisters and one run by the Komboni Sisters, which is a very big hospital that is inpatient, they do surgeries. It's overflowing with people. And people are traveling so far away. So in your mind, you imagine the ones who cannot make it because they cannot afford transport. When we went to this outreach station, when I was able to interview some people with the help of an interpreter, they had been walking for 3 hours to get there. How are you going to walk 3 hours if you haven't eaten? So it's a complicated situation, and I really believe that the church, in so many ways, is really the solution for many problems in South Sudan, not because they went in with that in mind, but because they found a need, and they're the only ones who are able in different ways to fill these gaps, and even then they don't fill them successfully. One of the other sad things I discovered this time, when I saw a lot of women who are pregnant, and I asked, how come you don't offer antenatal services? They did say that the government said they would be the ones to offer antenatal services and not mission hospitals. But the government does not do outreach. So the doctor told me of an incident where there's a child who was born with HIV. He's 2 hours away from the city. He was running out of his antiretroviral medicine. The doctor thought he would help, so he went to the government hospital in Wau and asked for the medicine, and he was told, you are not the one to provide that service, we are. But the government does not do outreach. So what does that mean for that child living with HIV? If they cannot take their medication, the chances of that developing into full-blown AIDS is very, 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 very possible. So there are lots of challenges, and you see the church trying to fill those needs, but the needs are so many, and the country is so vast. You know, whenever you fly over the air, it takes you an hour to get to our missions, and these are the locations where a lot of Catholic facilities are located. So you always wonder about the in-between. Who is serving those areas in between, where there is no urban center, where there is no airstrip, where there are security concerns for good reason, and you cannot really establish missions there? Those are the questions you wonder about. Yeah.
Thank you, Mundi. I'm wondering if you could speak just for a little bit about the school, the health training school, and the nurses, and the mission and the type of training that they're hands-on training that they're receiving.
Sure. Catholic Health Training Institute, safe estimates say that 40% of trained healthcare workers in South Sudan have gone through the Catholic Health Training Institute. When you talk to the facilities that have employed them, a lot of the nurses in charge at the Komboni Teaching Hospital are former graduates of ours. They speak very highly about our students. Our training is practical from the word go. They spend half the day in class learning theory, and they spend half the day in the hospitals, 3 hospitals in WOW, doing hands-on training. And when you talk to the supervisors, they say, like, within a week, your students are able to do what we ask them to do. The pictures you saw at the beginning, those babies were born on ours in WOW this time around. Those are our students who had delivered those babies. The number of children born at the Komboni Hospital every day is 5 or more. So it is busy. But it's a 3-year program. And in South Sudan, the distinction of midwifery is separate from nursing. So when our students come in, they choose whether they want to be nurses or whether they want to be midwives. And so then they then start their studies, and we also do other things alongside the health courses. Like right now, the first years are getting a communication course from a new Solidarity lay missionary from New Zealand. So they learn how to be better at communicating. They do some courses in psychology, but they also do some faith formation classes. Even though we receive students from all faith backgrounds, we don't discriminate. All this is to help them to be great nurses all around. And it's interesting to see because I've gone there 3 times now since last year. So the group that I found as first years last year are now the 3rd years. And seeing them at work, the kind of confidence they have in their ability to completely do a procedure is mind-blowing. And I just want to mention that nurses and midwives in a country like South Sudan do way more than a nurse in this country would ever be allowed to do. So they do a lot more. But to see these students are so confident in their ability. But of course, on the other side is the reality of what world are they stepping out into with these skills? The rate of employment is very low. The amount of payment they would get is very low. So how many of them will stay as nurses serving South Sudan is the big question. And you can't begrudge them. They go out, they get families of their own. They want to provide them with a better life than they got themselves. But one of the other sad things is that I've met quite a few of our former students because of the gender inequalities in South Sudan. Once they get married, their husbands no longer allow them to practice. So that's another thing that we are constantly trying to impart in them is their strength as women and how women can change their societies and how to even, I would say, make better choices when it comes to who they partner with so that they're able to continue using this education that they have fought so hard to get, because a female student ending up in stage TI has fought a lot of odds to get there because her education is rarely prioritized over that of her brothers. There are many things that even threats, I would say threats or promises of marriage that come along the way. Sometimes their fathers do want to get their bride price early, so they fight many odds. So why lose that when you finish? But just a little bit of good news. The highest student in midwifery in the whole of South Sudan this year was our graduate, a female graduate. So such stories give you so much hope and joy. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Mumbi. Since we got started a little late, we are running a little behind. So I want to ask now if there are any questions. Beth is going to moderate questions from the audience. If you have any questions, you can put them in the chat. And Beth will come off mute, or you can just come off mute and ask your question.
Yeah, so I have been involved with this ministry for, I don't know, 5, 6 years. And I feel like I've learned so much from hearing from Mumbi and Mary. And really, we'd love to hear questions from the audience, all of you who are participating. And if I can't see everybody, which is a little challenging, please just go ahead and take yourself off mute and say, I have a question, so that you can ask that. Part of what I have learned about South Sudan is that the model in which we gather people to teach them brings together people from differing areas, different tribes, perhaps people that didn't get along, and through their experience of education and building community, that begins to shift some things. So I don't know, Mumbai or Mary, do you want to talk a little bit about reconciliation and how that's coming about in South Sudan in some way? Mumby, I suppose that's your
Sure.
thought.
So from the time Solidarity with South Sudan was founded, it was always with the idea that we would intentionally recruit students from all over the country, and also the Nuba Mountains, which is in Sudan. It's a contested area, but it falls under Sudan. And this was an attempt to start bridging those divides. In a country that has had so much conflict for so long, and a lot of that conflict is promoted along ethnic lines or tribal lines, it was important for a different way of living to be imagined. And it's been amazing to hear stories from our students when they come and start interacting with people of a different group that, oh, I never knew that about you, because what they have had for so long are stereotypes and harmful stereotypes about the other group, or all the experiences with the other group has been in times of conflict. So you remember, oh, my cousin, my uncle was killed by somebody of that group. So then you demonize the entire group. And this is especially interesting to see during the cultural day performances. Each of the institutions has a culture day, and they perform dances and songs from their tribes. And some of the students might only be two from one tribe, and you see other students from other tribes joining them, learning the dance, learning the language, and performing with them, and making friends across those divides, which makes for a better Sudan in the South Sudan in the years to come, is when you learn tolerance, and beyond tolerance, you learn acceptance. And you realize that people are the same and our needs are the same. And this is one of the biggest successes of our institutions, is that for 2 years at the Teachers Training College and for 3 years at the Health Training Institute, our students live side by side, as both programs are residential. So there's no getting away from other people. You're eating together, learning together, sleeping in the same dormitory. And this has been one of the most successful things about our project, outside of the regular programming that we offer. Yeah.
I think that is so very exciting. It very much inspires me, this sense that you can bring people together, they can learn together, they can build community, and when they leave, some of those assessments that they had about a different tribe or a different group have shifted, because those people are now their friends. I think that's really the seeds, and growing what can change the country. I think that's really, really very exciting. I just want to leave a little space here if somebody wants to come off mute and just jump in, say, I have a question. Feel free to do that. And I don't know if you all are looking at the chat, but they're giving us an opportunity to donate as well. So it's 4:53. Well, it's 4:53 in California. So maybe I could say a little bit about that piece of it. As we listen to today, I think these models of developing people and relationships, and one of the things I find so inspiring and exciting about the work is we're building self-sufficiency among the people. And I think for me personally, that's something I want to support, because I know we're building the competency and we're building the skills as midwives, teachers, people who can help with this pastoral work and facilitating trauma. That was a really important thing that we talked about at the beginning, how to help people work through that or live with that in a way that is I don't know, positive or helpful, that they can move through that. And I think I would really ask any of you on the phone to join me in donating to Friends in Solidarity, because I think our donations are at the heart of how we bring hope to those people. The hope that is can be more, that is there, but needs to be supported, as well as the dignity of the people who are in our courses and learning. So if you have any inclination to donate, please look in the chat, and there'll be a place at the end where you can give your money to really help and support Friends in Solidarity.
Beth, there's a question here.
Oh, great.
Yes.
Terrific.
The question is from Sister Marilyn, and she asks, how do we prioritize the challenges that Friends in Solidarity faces?
Oh, very good question.
We support the work of solidarity with South Sudan. So we give them a lot of discretion in telling us what their urgent needs are. So there are those things that we have funded constantly over the years. But every now and then, especially like with the pastoral program that does the faith formation, trauma healing, there are things that are constantly emerging. And we work very closely with the Solidarity fundraising team in Rome. So between us, we try and figure out who needs what and what is most urgent. And it's also based on what we are receiving, because it changes from year to year. There are lots of our supporters on this webinar, and I'll take this chance just to say thank you. So many individuals, foundations, and congregations of sisters have believed in this mission for so long and have faithfully donated to us. We exist because you support us so generously and support the work in South Sudan. But we are never able to fully meet the needs on the ground. So it's always a dance of prayer, faith, hope. And I would have to say, in the 2 years that I've done this, I get pleasantly surprised each year when a donation comes out of the blue, just when we need it for something. And so that's how this work has continued. Yeah. Well, it's
and
already...
Mumby's going to be a nun on a bus.
Yes, I'm going to be a nun on the bus from Saturday. I'm in Chicago actually for the Nuns on the Bus reunion. Then I'll fly to Tucson and go all the way to California. As you know, this is a critical election where we are hoping to encourage people to be multi-issue voters. The reason I ride for Solidarity with South Sudan and Friends in Solidarity is especially because of care of the earth and the climate crisis that is really affecting South Sudan. Yet South Sudan is only responsible for 0.01% of global emissions. Yet they are paying a heavy, heavy price. So if any of you live in any of these stops, please come out, and it will be great to meet you in person. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we are almost at time, so we want to have our closing prayer. Tom, if you will lead us in the Comboni prayer, and Jeannie will put the prayer up for us to see it.
Daniel Comboni is a significant person and very important to the life of the people there in the Sudan. And so let us recognize him and pray this. Maybe we pray the prayer together, huh? God of all peoples, your spirit of holiness made Saint Daniel Comboni a living image of your love for the poor and oppressed. Help us to follow Saint Daniel more deeply into his missionary charism, and kindle in our hearts the certainty of your call to preach the good news in word and deed. Our lives be true answers to your love. Filled with courageous acts of solidarity with the brothers and sisters you place on our paths, so that your kingdom may shine in a world awaiting justice, love, and peace. Amen.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. God bless you. Have a wonderful rest of your day or evening.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Wonderful.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.